Time to talk about how we can make some more money because UFC Macau, Xiong versus Figueiredo goes down this Saturday, May 30th. I'm going to break down every fight on the card. Let's get right into it. Women's strawweights kicking things off. We got Lookboonmee taking on Jacqueline Amorim. So interesting fight here, very closely lined. Lookboonmee, although she's very short, she's got solid striking, throws in combinations a lot. Times her strikes well, she'll fire in when her opponents kick, when they're off balance, and she's got really good kicks of her own, good calf kicks, good front kicks, overall an excellent striker. On the other hand, she's got zero wrestling and BJJ. From what I understand, her training is basically in Muay Thai, not a ton of grappling in her background, and that kind of shows in the cage. She's terrible at defending takedowns, doesn't really get her hips back well, doesn't show a lot of understanding of takedown defense fundamentals. And when she's on the ground, she really has minimal jiu-jitsu skills as well. But she just stands back up. I mean, you go back and watch her fights. Every single time she's going up against a grappler, she might lose, but they're having to get several takedowns against her because she's just giving her back, standing back up. She's got that anti-jiu-jitsu power that Derek Lewis seems to have. She's going up against Amorim here, a fighter I like quite a bit. Now, she's kind of the opposite. On the feet, her striking is flimsy and harmless. If you go back to her regional tape before she came to the UFC, she did knock this one girl down, but obviously that opponent was pretty low level. I don't think she's going to be hurting anybody at the UFC level. Her striking from a technical perspective, I don't know if it's that awful, but just no power. And I don't think she's going to be able to rack up any points on the judges' scorecards through striking. Just not a whole lot of power on the feet, nothing impactful. Her wrestling's not too bad, and of course, if you know anything about Amorim, she's got an extensive BJJ background, one of the best in the division as far as the grappling goes, and she kind of has the wrestling to match it, right? She has decent takedowns, she can go for a single leg, go for a knee tap. Really has a number of ways to get the fight to the ground, even from the body lock. I like her wrestling, it's just that she doesn't have a lot of takedowns in the tank, right? She can get tired if she attempts too many. He's not one of these grapplers who has the ability to just land takedowns over and over again, which could be a problem here because, like I said, in the past when Lookboonmee has lost to grapplers, it's because they're taking her down over and over again. So that could be a problem here. But Amorim might have better top control and finishing ability than any of Lookboonmee's previous opponents. When she gets her opponents on the ground, Amorim has excellent top pressure. She can flow really well from position to position. She actually has pretty good ground and pound, even though on the feet her striking isn't great. She has effective ground and pound in the grappling realm. And of course, she has an array of submissions. She'll look for leg locks, which she can use to reverse position if she ends up on her back. She's got a good rear naked choke. She can look for arm bars. Really exceptional in the grappling. It's just that sometimes she can get a little bit tired and flake out. So I don't usually do this, but this is a situation where we had an extra week to marinate on this event. At first I was going Amorim, right? Seemed kind of obvious just because Lookboonmee has zero takedown defense and grappling. I do think Amorim's going to take her down, and I was interested to see if there was any indication in the tape about whether Amorim would be able to secure back control against Lookboonmee. And I was watching, I'm like, yeah, when Lookboonmee gives her back, I could definitely see Amorim just pulling her back into the backpack, securing the body triangle, and then either banking the rest of that round or finding a rear naked choke. But I just keep watching Lookboonmee, and it's like, geez, she is really, really hard to keep down. We haven't seen her get officially backpacked, so maybe Amorim will be the one to backpack and submit her. But just as far as I can see, Lookboonmee is never accepting being on the bottom. Even when she's taking some shots, she's getting to her knees. And if her opponent tries to take her back, she's like tripoding, shaking them off. So ultimately, I'm really concerned about the fact that Amorim doesn't have a lot of takedowns in the tank. If Lookboonmee can get up a couple of times, Amorim might not be as effective with her takedowns, and if she's missing takedowns, she's going to get cooked. Lookboonmee might even end up on top and start using ground and pound against her. So yeah, I actually kind of flip-flopped my lean for this fight. I'm going to actually lean slightly toward Lookboonmee. I think Amorim could end up backpacking her, or maybe her top pressure will just be so great that Lookboonmee can't even get to her knees, or maybe she just submits her. The problem is, if none of those things happen, and Lookboonmee can get back to her feet a couple of times, or God forbid, if Amorim ends up having trouble getting takedowns, Lookboonmee's going to win. She's a million times better at striking, and she could even win in the grappling exchanges if she ends up on top and Amorim's too tired to reverse position. So give me Lookboonmee by decision. However, from a betting perspective, you can't touch this money line. It's minus 110, minus 110. And I had a really hard time figuring out what the lean even was, so I don't think there's any value betting aside here. Lookboonmee is probably correlated with the over. If you like Amorim, maybe she gets it done early by sub. And Amorim by KO is always a decent look, just because she does have that good ground and pound in her repertoire, and a lot of times people are not expecting these straw weights to win by KO. So Amorim KO could be a good look, but I'm going to say Loma Lookboonmee gets it done by decision. Featherweights, 2 newcomers, Kangji Zhu taking on Rodrigo Vera. Another very closely lined fight. The China representative, Kangji Zhu, has very powerful combinations. He's going to throw a lot of rear hands, a lot of hooks. It's going to sit down on his strikes, try to hurt you. Throws a lot of lead kicks as well, but he's very powerful and explosive in just about everything he does. You might see quite a few takedowns here, and he defends these pretty well. He's got a strong whizzer, he's got strong hips, and if he gets taken down, he's usually popping back to his feet pretty well. There is a very big problem with Zhu, though. A couple things that I don't like. Just the overall pace and stamina. He fights like a guy who thinks he's going to gas out, because there are times in his fights he's just standing around, not really doing anything, kind of just waiting for his opponent to come in. And yeah, he looks tired at times. So even though he defends grappling well initially, if you can just grapple like Shin Horiguchi did. And by the way, both of Zhu's last couple wins are by split decision. I don't know if he won either of those fights. I mean, Ji Bin, that was kind of close, but I'm pretty sure Shin Horiguchi should have gotten the win there. This guy's come off a couple of robberies, but yeah, Shin Horiguchi, a better grappler than Zhu's opponent here, Rodrigo Vera. The thing with Zhu is just, while he's good early, I think if you can really put the pressure on him, you can tire him out. And that's something Rodrigo Vera might be able to do here, because this guy, for the most part, he's just walking forward with that high guard, applying pressure, working strikes. He'll work some strikes to the body, work some front kicks, fire some combinations. And he does like to wrestle against the cage. I like the way this guy mixes in his wrestling. He's not just shooting bad shots from space. He'll work you to the fence, uses combinations, feint some punches, then drop to a double leg and lift you up there. And he's got quite a few takedowns in the tank. He will get sort of tired eventually, but I've seen him lift opponents and drop them to the ground a few times in a single round before. So this guy's got a decent amount of takedowns in the tank. The problem with him is he's not super powerful. So even though he's applying pressure and throwing strikes, they don't have a lot of pop on him. They're not too effective. He does have some knockouts in his career, but those guys he's knocking out, I don't think, are very tough. And the problem with the grappling is, yeah, he can lift you, he can take you down, but the control isn't great. Doesn't really have any good jiu-jitsu or submission ability. So early, Zhu, I think, is just going to be able to pop right back up if he gets taken down. I don't think Vera's going to really get anywhere in the grappling unless he's just doing it the whole fight nonstop. But like I said, even though Vera has some takedowns in the tank, even he can get tired from, lifting his opponent over and over. So ultimately, this is another fight I was going back and forth on. I was kind of leaning Vera ever so slightly, like 51%, just because I like the pressure. I think Zhu will slow down a bit over the course of the fight. That'll allow Vera to get a hit on strikes and maybe find some more takedowns. But then I saw the line initially. It was like Zhu at plus 140 or plus 145. I'm like, that's too wide a line. I think I'm going to place a bet on Zhu. I know some other people are betting Zhu, so I'm like, okay, I'm right on that bandwagon. And the lines come way down. Now he's minus 105. And the more I've thought about it, it's like Vera's taking the fight on short notice. He's got to go all the way to China. I was only like 51% on him to begin with. And it's like, yeah, since I've got a bet on Zhu, and, I think it's really close, I'm going to lean towards Zhu just because he's got so much more power early. All he has to do is nab round 1, which I think he can do pretty easily, and just get by in round 2. Which is also on the table. Even if he loses round 3, as long as he secures those first 2 rounds, he'll be good. Vera just does not have enough power. If he had better control after getting takedowns, if he had more power, I think, it would be more impactful that he's tiring out Zhu. But it's just like, okay, even if this guy gets you a little tired out, well, what does he do? A tired Kangji Zhu might still have more power than a fresher Rodrigo Vera. So give me Kangji Zhu by decision here. I would also say he's got the finishing upside early. All right, strawweights, we've got Angela Hill, the veteran, taking on another newcomer, Jingnan Zhang. Angela Hill, she's a crafty veteran. We all know it. She is pretty good at everything. I'd say she's definitely well-rounded. She's got some good striking. I like her the most when she's able to pressure. She's able to, work a jab, pull, and work some front kicks, manage distance as she's pressuring. She's really, really strong in the clinch, in my opinion. She does have some wrestling that she's worked on. She can fire into a double leg. We've seen her wrestling more recently in her fights. But I think the clinch is where she's best. Even though she doesn't seem that physically strong, if she can clinch you up, she tends to be pretty effective in those positions. She can hold against the fence, work knees. She's got really, really strong clinch strikes like knees and elbows. So that's a sneaky place she might be able to get ahead here. Problem with Angela Hill, she is 42 years old now, and I think she's starting to show her age. I respect Angela Hill a lot. I think she's got an impressive body of work. I think she's shown improvements late into her career, but at this point, it was really the Tabitha Ricci fight that I didn't like, because I thought Angela Hill was going to win that fight. I thought she should have been a favorite, but she just sort of showed her age when Tabitha Ricci was just coming forward with her terrible, unskilled combinations. Angela Hill just looked like she wasn't liking it. She just didn't have the same pop on her shots and didn't respond to strikes as well. So I think she's starting to show her age, which is one of the biggest factors for this fight. So Zhang, she is younger than Angela Hill, but not by a lot. She's getting up there in age as well. And of course, she's had a lot of success in other organizations. Her boxing's really good. I think she's got good combinations. And for the most part, where I think she'll probably win this fight is just by landing more effectively in close. I think she's got more pop on her shots. And, unlike a lot of strawweights, she is fairly skilled. She does attack on angles sometimes. She'll work to the body. Shows more evidence of skilled striking than a lot of these other fighters. And if she does get taken down, she'll usually find her way back to her feet. But at the end of the day, still kind of a typical strawweight, meaning, usually these strawweights go to decision, and they don't separate themselves that much. So Zhang, yes, she does have some power. She is, a step above a lot of the other strawweights in terms of her striking skill. But I'm just watching her fights. It's like she's not separating herself that much a lot of the time. So even though I think she's got more gas in the tank than Angela Hill, she probably has more power and will react better to getting hit. And for those reasons, I think she should be favored. But holy cow, this line might be too wide. It was definitely too wide when Zhang got to like minus 300. I was staring at Angela Hill plus 250. Thought about pulling the trigger, but at the end of the day, I just don't really want to bet on 42-year-old Angela Hill. But kind of wish that I had now. So if it goes back up to above plus 200, I might take a shot on Hill. Plus 170, I think if you're looking to place a money line bet, that's the way to go. But I'm just not interested when there's already been so much movement. I do think Zhang is more likely to win the fight. Like I said, I don't think she's showing her age as much. I think she'll be more effective in the pocket. And I think if she's taken down by Hill, she'll be able to work back up. Hill might have a bit of an advantage in the clinch. Give me Zhang, and I think this fight goes to a decision at a very high clip, but you're not getting any value on that. The over 2.5 was like minus 400 last I checked. Still might be a good parlay piece, though. Give me Zhang by decision. Interesting one. We got two flyweights, but it's going to be a bantamweight fight because this was scrapped together on short notice. Tsuruya was scheduled to fight Jesus Aguilar, but now he's fighting guess who? Luis Gurule, who we just talked about a couple weeks ago because he just fought in the previous UFC event. So Tsuruya, we know what this guy wants to do. Comes from a wrestling background. All he wants to do is just get you to the ground and work his crazy submission attempts. He'll shoot double legs over and over again. He does have some nice throws from the body lock position. He's got a number of ways to get you down. He can even do some crazy judo. We saw him do a nasty shoulder throw against Joshua Van. So he's got a number of ways to get you to the ground. Also has a good single leg, but for the most part, he's just firing in on that explosive double. Ground and pound. Tsuruya does have some ground and pound once he gets you down, but it's not great. For the most part, instead of landing strikes when he gets you down, he mostly just wants to go for these crazy submissions, which I mentioned. The twister is one he attempts a lot, and on road to UFC, I believe he got a leg Americana, or key lock, in one of his fights. Now, commentary, Lorisenko was saying it was an armbar. I think officially it got ruled a Kimura, so people were all over the place. It was kind of hard to see what it was from the camera angles, but to me it looked like a leg Americana. That same thing Robert Valentin got on tough against Paddy McCrory. Now, these are pretty low occurrence subs Tsuruya's going for, so typically we don't see those work against anyone other than bums. I don't think they'll work against Gurule here. Man, this guy is a victim on the feet, right? Now, against Aguilar, I think he might have done okay, because if you look at what Ray Tsuruya does on the feet, he just kind of dances around and maybe throw like one explosive movement at a time, like a spinning back fist. But for the most part, all he's going to do is just like throw a check hook, move out, just wait for you to enter, throw like a right hand and circle out. And against Aguilar, that might have worked, because what does Aguilar do? He's just running around the cage, ducking his head down, windmilling punches. And I think Ray Tsuruya could have just olayed him. You know, he just runs right at you, just hit a check hook, and be out of the pocket, and you don't have to worry about anything. Going to be different against Gurule here. So we've already talked about him twice this year on the channel, because he's been very active in 2026. Doesn't have a ton of power, although it kind of looked like he did in his last fight against Perez, but that might just be because Perez is an old flyweight, hadn't been in the cage for a little while. And the durability of Gurule is a little suspect. It's held up a little bit in his last few fights, but he did get KO'd by Ode Osborne. He was getting rocked by Aguilar, and then even at one point in his last fight against Perez, it looked like he got rocked. So the durability of Gurule is one of his weaknesses, but he's got excellent stamina. He's going to throw a lot of volume, a lot of combinations, attacks on angles really well, and he's just a master of moving his head as he strikes. He can just sort of walk you down, slip your punches while he's landing his own punches on angles. He did that really, really well against Perez. The head movement's incredible, and that's one thing I think he can use to compensate for his durability. Even though he doesn't have a good chin, it's kind of hard to hit him clean with the way he's constantly moving his head. So Gurule definitely has the overall striking advantage here. And here's the thing. Like I mentioned, the big weakness for Gurule is the durability. As far as we can tell, not so much the grappling. Now, he will give his back a lot if he's taken down, but kind of like we talked about with Loma Lookboonmee, he's got like the Derek Lewis anti-jiu-jitsu powers. He's just standing right back up. Now, he does have some grappling ability, too, to go along with it. There's no question about that. But I think he could defend a lot of the grappling here. So this one was a little bit difficult to break down. Ray Tsuruya, I do think, is going to be bigger than Gurule. He's just listed at 1 inch bigger, but Tsuruya always looks big to me when he's in the cage. He's also extremely young. We haven't seen him compete in over a year. He might be making improvements. I do think early on his wrestling is good enough to get Gurule down, and he's very top-heavy from side control. He might be able to flatten Gurule out a bit. Probably won't be landing too much ground and pound. Might be going for crazy submissions. I think there's a chance Tsuruya could body triangle Gurule. So like I said, Gurule kind of gives up his back, and usually he can force you off of his back if you don't do a good job getting your hooks in. But if Ray Tsuruya can secure a body triangle really quickly, he might be able to control Gurule. We haven't really seen him in those positions. But we see Ray Tsuruya slow down all the time, and Gurule, although he's going to be smaller here, he's a strong, stocky guy. I think he will be able to work back to his feet. While I think Tsuruya could control him, if I had to guess, I just see Gurule being able to, get to his knees during transitions and then potentially be able to shake Tsuruya off even if he has a body triangle. And if that starts happening, we always see Tsuruya slow down. Even against Carlos Hernandez in the 3rd round, he just had nothing left. I think he failed a takedown in round 3, and Hernandez ended up on top of him for a while. Gurule is way better than Carlos Hernandez in my opinion. So I could see as early as round 2, Gurule stuffing takedowns, potentially ending up on top. And when he is on top, he's got way better stamina and way more activity with his punches, so he's going to be able to ground and pound Tsuruya quite a bit. Then of course on the feet, I don't think it's really going to be that close. Gurule's chin is bad enough that we have to worry about it. I think even against a guy like Tsuruya, because he will do things like spinning back fists and the like. But yeah, if Gurule gets his offense going, I don't think the simple check hook and try to circle out by Tsuruya is going to work, because Gurule, he's very balanced. He's going to be able to follow Tsuruya with his strikes as Tsuruya tries to move away. He's going to be tagging him in the head, making him panic wrestle. And yeah, this is a short notice fight, but I think Gurule is going to be live here. So this is crazy, but we might have money on the same guy 2 events in a row, because I think this line should be way closer. Gurule at plus 185, easy peasy. I saw him at plus 170. I already took him there, but I think there's value on that. I think this should be a really, really close line. So I'm going to lean ever so slightly to Gurule here. I do think that while it's possible Tsuruya could get him down and control him, I think from what I've seen, Gurule is going to be able to find his way back to his feet, or if nothing else, tire Tsuruya out in round 1, and then defend takedowns and grappling from that point on, and then dominate on the feet. Give me Luis Gurule by decision here. I think he does get his second win in a really short period of time. Bantamweights, Aoriqileng taking on Cody Haddon. This is an interesting one. Aoriqileng, he's a bit of a marauder. He just likes to wing these big punches in close. He's got a nasty right hand, got a lot of hooks, got some kicks mixed in there too. He's fairly strong, I'd say, and he ends up having decent takedown defense. But if you can actually get him on the ground, he's not great. He gives up his back a lot. Doesn't really have any jiu-jitsu skills. To me, Aoriqileng kind of seems like a victim on the ground. I don't think he necessarily has the best chin. We saw Ayman Zahabi brutally sleep him. And then, I don't think his stamina is that great either, to be perfectly honest. And we've seen some bad looks from him. Daniel Marcos was absolutely destroying him. And then fortunately for Aoriqileng, he got kicked in the groin a couple of times, so he was able to just quit. But Daniel Marcos was brutally annihilating him. For me, historically, I haven't been too high on Aoriqileng. He's kind of dangerous. You can trust him to land some big power punches, then he can defend takedowns a lot of the time, but overall, not a huge fan of his game. Cody Haddon. He hasn't fought in forever. The last time we saw him was October 2024. He's had some injuries, like a foot injury, that have kept him away from the cage, but he's 10 million times better than Aoriqileng. That's the problem here. We haven't seen this kid, Cody Haddon, in forever, but I do think he is so much better than his opponent here. He's got nasty pressure boxing. Now, we don't have a ton of data on him because he's had a Contender Series fight and just that one fight in his debut against Dan Argueta. His strike statistics, the volume is just insane. The amount of significant strikes this guy's landing per minute at distance is otherworldly. He's just non-stop throwing strikes. Does a really good job of coming forward, ducking when his opponent strikes, coming back up with punches. Non-stop movement. And he's got some decent power. He can definitely hurt you with his strikes. And because I think Aoriqileng might have a little bit of chin concerns, might have some stamina issues, I don't think he's going to withstand that pace. And then to make matters worse, Cody Haddon's also pretty good on the ground. So if he hurts Aoriqileng, or God forbid can take him down somehow, I think he's going to be able to get to the back and potentially submit Aoriqileng. So yeah, it's as simple as this. Cody Haddon, we've got to be a little wary because we haven't seen him fight in forever. Now he's heading from Australia to China. But he is 9 million times better than Aoriqileng. So I thought maybe we'd be able to get Cody Haddon at a discount because we haven't seen him in a while. But nobody's fooled. Minus 350 is the money line. And in my opinion, you can't play that just because some of the concerns related to Haddon's layoff. But yeah, I do think he smokes Aoriqileng. I think if he's winning by finish. It could be KO or submission, but I'm going to lean towards KO. Give me Cody Haddon by first round KO. Oh gosh, we got welterweights. Mang Ding taking on Jose Henrique. So yeah, this might be the stay away fight on the card. It could end up turning into a bet, but for me, I don't have anything on it now. Mang Ding seems like he's a decent grappler. The wrestling's not too great, but the grappling's okay. That's like one area I'd say he's competent. When he gets to top control, he's pretty good. He can cause some damage to you in some ways from those advantageous grappling positions. If he gets into the pocket, he's got some decent combinations. Got a nice overhand, a nice hook. But a big problem with him is he doesn't always close distance well. We saw that on the Contender Series against his opponent, Rami Hamed, who was just dancing around, thinks he's Steven Wonderboy Thompson. And boy, was Mang Ding getting frustrated. He just had no good tactics to close the distance. He's firing a lot of like lead calf kicks. I don't like it when fighters throw a lot of lead calf kicks. I mean, that's not a super effective strike. If that's one of your go-to weapons, I just think that's kind of a red flag. And he was getting frustrated. Mang Ding was like hitting himself, getting really annoyed that he couldn't close the distance against Hamed. And that was just one of the worst fights I've ever seen. Just absolutely pitiful. So, yeah, I'm not super high on Mang Ding overall. I put a question mark here just because I watched this guy. I watched him when I was looking at his Contender Series fight in 2024, and I went back and watched some tape on this fight, and I just don't really know what people are seeing. A lot of people seem to be kind of impressed with this guy. I'm not that impressed. It's like he kind of hits hard. His chin's not too great. We saw him get rocked a little bit in one of his last couple fights. He's kind of competent, like he doesn't look horrible, just not really too great either. Just not really high on this guy at all. But Jose Henrique, holy smokes. This guy's really young, but he has not fought in forever. One of the last times we saw him in a major fight was when he fought Kinoshita, the guy they call Japanese Connor. That guy gets finished by everybody and their grandma, but he actually finished Jose Henrique, and that's how he ended up in the UFC. So Jose Henrique, not a lot of good looks on tape for him. But if you look at his more recent fights, He's seeming to use his height and length to try to manage distance. You see, he's listed at 6'3", 79-inch reach. That does give him a little length advantage here. And yeah, it looks like he's trying to manage distance a lot more in some of his more recent fights. Use some long striking, use some kicks, and not engaging in the pocket as much. Holy cow, this guy's chin is absolute garbage. If you connect on this guy, he's toast, and that's just a horrible look for somebody as young as Henrique. Because a lot of his fights are taking place when he's like, I think 19 or 20. As young as that, and this guy's getting hurt left and right. The good thing we can say about him, though, is if he does get hurt, a lot of times you'll see him sort of zombie through. He's not going to quit. You have to actually put him out cold. If you just hurt him, he'll keep coming at you. He'll keep fighting. So yeah, this is kind of a nightmarish matchup. Just because I hate having to break it down. I have no idea what's going to happen. Both these guys have a lot of weaknesses. Jose Henrique, he hasn't fought in forever, and now he's going all the way to China. Just kind of hard to say what we can expect from these guys. So money came in on Meng Ding. This was like a pick'em. He ended up being a favorite, although not a super large favorite. And, he's been more active. He's got more fights. He has a lot more experience and probably has the better chin overall. But for me, if I had to go with a side, I'd probably have to go with Henrique because he's younger. And if he's able to manage distance, we've seen Meng Ding does not have a lot of good ways to close the distance. And he might hurt Jose Henrique. I think his main path to victory is to chin this guy. But, if he chins him, doesn't knock him out, like I said, Henrique's going to zombie through. I think this could either be like a Meng Ding knockout. Ding could hurt Henrique, and maybe Henrique just zombies through something. Or maybe Henrique is able to manage distance and, win a boring decision, really frustrate Meng Ding. Overall, I think this is a type of fight where you should just go with the plus money. I don't even bother trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. I don't think either of these guys are high-level fighters. They could quit, really, even though I said Henrique doesn't usually quit. I wouldn't really put anything past this guy. I don't know him super well as a fighter. And yeah, anything could happen here. I think you just got to go with the plus money. So I said if Henrique got up to like plus 125, plus 130, I take a stab at him. I've seen him at plus 120. For me, that's like on the border. If he gets to a bigger dog than that, I think I'll take him. Give me Henrique by decision. I think for Henrique, his most likely path to victory is decision. But overall, I think this fight does not go the distance, if you factor in the win equity that Meng Ding has. But I'm going to go Henrique by decision for this one. Middleweights, we got Luis Felipe Diaz taking on Yisak Lee. So I'm very intrigued by this Felipe Diaz guy. He made his splash on the Contender Series last year, and at that point, he had not fought in a while. When I was looking at his previous tape, I wasn't too impressed. This guy definitely had some quit in him. He was fighting in Brave, fighting against some decent level competition. If you look at the guys he's lost to most recently, those guys, have gone on to do pretty well. So he's not losing the weak competition, but I didn't like some of the quit I saw from him. He could definitely get chinned at times. And I also thought he had some bad fight IQ, bad volume. But, man, when he showed up to weigh-ins for his Contender Series fight, people thought he was on steroids. He just looked absolutely jacked. He didn't look like the same fighter. And then when he did have his fight against Donovan Hedrick, who was a decent, undefeated fighter at the time, he kind of looked like he was on steroids because Hedrick had a ton of power, was finishing people left and right in his fights prior to that. Diaz was just eating his punches like Big Macs, and I think at the end of round one, if I remember correctly, Diaz just floored Hedrick with a huge punch. And Diaz was also looking really strong in the grappling exchanges. So yeah, he's got an incredible physique. He just came into that fight looking super muscular. And judging by how the fight went, it looked like he was on steroids. So that's something to look out for. I've also got to say, if you just look at Diaz on Instagram, I don't know if he's still on steroids, but whatever he did to attain that physique, he's still doing, because recent photos of him look like he's still jacked. So I don't think, strength is going to be an issue for him here. But if he goes up against a good striker, I think he might be cooked. He is not hard to hit at all. He doesn't really have a lot of footwork, just kind of lumbers forward like a big, strong meathead. And I think someone could, really easily beat up his calf with leg kicks. I think someone with good footwork could really piece him up. But in the grappling, I think he's got his best chance to win his fights. What he was doing over and over again in his Contender Series fight, just trying to get to the back from the body lock. Just get a body lock, duck under the arm, take the back, work hooks in. That seems to be his bread and butter. And, he has other ways of getting the fight to the ground. He's got a good double leg. He can transition off to a single leg. Definitely more of a grappler than a striker. And I think he could have a lot of success here against Yisak Lee, this Yisak Lee guy. We don't know a ton about him, but you can tell just by looking at him, he's not the greatest physical specimen, a little flabby in the midsection. Based on the tape we do have, he might have some decent footwork and movement, kind of hits angles a little bit, has some decent punches, he'll work combinations. Not necessarily a ton of power, but there are some things you see that might indicate, okay, he might be decent at boxing, but when he's in close, he's just going for this judo nonsense, which I do not like. So apparently a lot of these Korean guys like judo, or that guy Xiong Ko came to the UFC, he's kind of a judo guy. But you don't like to see judo nonsense against the guy who takes your back, right? Because if you think about judo, a lot of times when you're stepping across, trying to, load your opponent onto your hips, or trying to reap their legs, you kind of give them your back in the process, and yeah, that's exactly what Luis Felipe Diaz wants. And in fact, if you look at the one professional loss for Lee, somebody took his back, choked him, and then he just tapped like a chicken. I did not like that look for Lee. So ultimately, even though in the past I haven't been high on Luis Felipe Diaz, whether he's on steroids, whether he just, discovered what the weight room was, this guy's a lot stronger than he used to be. There's no question about that. He's got good strength at this point. And I think he's going to be way more physical than Lee in close. And if Lee goes for that stupid judo nonsense, he's going to get his back taken. And as we've seen, that might lead to him getting choked out pretty quickly. So even though I think Lee could have a bit of a striking advantage here, he might get an early knockout, I'm just not super convinced. This guy does not seem to be a great physical specimen. I'm not convinced he can really generate that much power. I don't think he's that great of an athlete. And based on the way these guys fight, I think grappling is going to be initiated fairly soon. And I think Luis Felipe Diaz, he's got more experience. I think he's a better grappler, and I think he's way stronger. I also think stylistically, given how these guys try to grapple, I think Diaz could end up on his back pretty easily. So for those reasons, I actually like Diaz. I placed a bet on him at minus 155. I think minus 170 is still playable. But even though he seems to have a lot of advantages here, you've got to be careful. This guy has shown quit in the past, so you can't go too crazy, but I think he gets this one done. Give me Diaz by round 1 submission. Flyweights, Alex Perez taking on Sumudaerji. So I gotta say, I was dismayed when I saw the lines for a lot of these fights, because there are a lot of spots I liked when I was doing research. I'm like, oh boy, I like Alex Perez in this matchup. I hope we get him as an underdog, but nope, we're not getting him as an underdog. A lot of these lines, pretty accurate until they started making some of these short notice fights. But Alex Perez, you'll hear him get knocked a lot. He's got a lot of losses in the UFC, but man, this guy is excellent stamina. He's just going to come forward nonstop. He's keeping his chin tucked, maintaining his guard well. He doesn't really get rocked a lot on the feet. Pretty durable, and that's why he's able to just come forward and just throw extensive combinations nonstop. He'll string together 3 to 5 punches at a time, just forcing his way into the pocket, looking to take your head off. And yeah, he pretty much did take Charles Johnson's head off. Now Perez, despite having those strengths in the striking realm, he does have a wrestling background. I think, in fact, he used to coach wrestling at the high school level, and he's going to time his takedowns very well. He's very hard to take down himself. He's got some of the best takedown defense in the flyweight division, but he's got some good offensive wrestling. He sets the takedowns up so well with his striking. They just come out of nowhere, and then he knows what he's doing in the wrestling realm. Not going to have trouble getting most of his opponents down. There's one problem with Alex Perez, though. You look at his record, he's been submitted 1 million times. And it's not like he's going unconscious due to chokes and stuff. He just taps at the first sign of adversity. I truly believe if you gave this guy a purple nurple, he'd tap to it. So, Sumudaerji, if you're listening to this, you need a way to beat Alex Perez. I guarantee you he'd tap to a purple nurple. This guy taps to everything. So that's kind of the problem with Perez, is he's really, really good overall. It's just he can't end up in any sort of submission, including a guillotine choke when he shoots a takedown, because he's probably going to tap. It's so weird that he's tough on the feet and, can take a shot and keep coming, but he doesn't have any ability to fight out of a submission. He just gives up when someone locks it up. So I find that very strange that he's tough in some ways, but not in others. Now, Sumudaerji, we already broke him down this year. He's a distance management merchant. He's super long. He's got that freakish 72-inch reach for the flyweight division. He's going to use it to stay at range, and he's listed at 5'8". I don't think that's right. I think he's more like 5'10", because this guy just looks like an alien compared to his opponents. And poor Jesus Aguilar had no chance of getting inside. Sumudaerji is just going to keep you at range with his jab. He's going to work some kicks, Going to use a check hook if you try to close the distance. Just back up, strike on the retreat. He's got some good dynamic strikes too, like wheel kicks, spinning back kicks. I think he's actually improved quite a bit recently. And his takedown defense and grappling seem to have improved as well. People thought Aguilar might be able to take Sumudaerji down. No chance. Sumudaerji was actually throwing around Aguilar like a rag doll. Now, he's not going to be taking down Perez, I don't think, but he has really good balance. He's got better takedown defense fundamentals. I do think if Perez can time a takedown well, he can get Sumudaerji down. And in the past, Sumudaerji has had difficulties with being submitted himself. Both these guys get submitted all the time. But I do think, just based on what I saw in the Charles Johnson fight with Sumudaerji, I think he's gotten a little bit better at his grappling, his jiu-jitsu. So I don't think he'll be such a victim on the ground anymore. But until we see more evidence of him grappling, we can't really confirm that he's that much improved. Alex Perez, he's not a huge submission threat himself. For the most part, he'll just work some ground and pound. So I think, how the grappling might play out here, we could see Perez landing some takedowns and potentially working some ground and pound off of those. And Sumudaerji will probably get back to his feet eventually. Now, one thing I don't like about Sumudaerji is that he can sort of slow down in fights. Even against Kevin Borjas last year, it looked like, he was slowing down, and the pace of that fight wasn't even that crazy. So I do think, even though Alex Perez is going to have to close some distance, if he can repeatedly whack Sumudaerji, I think Sumudaerji can be chinned a little bit. And I think Alex Perez could tire him out and break him. And that's why I agree with him being favored, but not by that much. I think, in the clinch, these guys are going to be kind of even. Both these guys have pretty good clinch strikes. And I don't think Perez is going to be able to pull away with the wrestling that much. Maybe he could. Maybe he could even submit Sumudaerji. But I think where Alex Perez wins this fight is just by being aggressive, closing the distance, and breaking down Sumudaerji, potentially knocking him out. So I am going to lean Alex Perez here, but I'm not going to play minus 140 because I'm kind of 55% Perez, maybe a little bit higher, and there's just no value on that. I do think if one of these guys finds a finish, it's going to be Perez. And yeah, why not take a shot on fight ends by sub? Because both of these guys love getting submitted. They're submission magnets. I am going to say Perez by decision, most likely. Welterweights, another fight that kind of ended up being scrapped together last minute. Jake Matthews versus Carlston Harris. So Jake Matthews was supposed to take on Muslim Salikov, and now he's getting a much easier opponent in my opinion. Jake Matthews, he's a guy who's got a really high guard, and for the most part, he's a combination puncher. Not someone with a ton of power, but he's going to come forward, he's going to look to either counter you or fire in with his own combinations. A lot of rear hands, a lot of hooks, just your standard power combinations. And I don't think he has a ton of power, but definitely doesn't hit soft either, so I think he could do some damage to Harris here. His conditioning's pretty good. Jake Matthews, he's not really a guy we worry about when it comes to gassing. He can fight at a decent pace in a lot of his fights. Been in some pretty solid fights in my opinion, and Michael Morales, that guy's finishing people left and right, but he didn't finish Matthews, wasn't even close. So Matthews, I think he's got a pretty good chin. The only time I really saw him getting whacked around was against Matthew Semmelsberger, surprisingly. He lost to Semmelsberger as a big favorite because Semmelsberger was dropping him left and right. But other than that, the durability of Matthews tends to hold up pretty well. Now, the fight IQ of Matthews might be a little bit questionable. He's a guy who likes to pull guillotine. Now, we sort of saw him drop the ball in his last fight against Neil Magny. And ultimately, I think that fight's having an impact on this line, which we'll talk about in a second. But suffice it to say, Jake Matthews, I think, sometimes has poor fight IQ. Maybe isn't wrestling when he should be wrestling. Maybe is wrestling when he shouldn't be. I don't think he's the best tactically, but the skills are all there. Carlston Harris, on the other hand, I am not impressed with this guy. Okay, so he's 38 years old now, coming off of a long layoff, taking a short notice fight and going to China. Those things aren't good, but I wasn't impressed with this guy to begin with. I don't like the way he throws his punches, so he's got some knockouts in the UFC. Those are against people who really have no chin. I mean, Impa Kasanganai, more recently he's been fighting at 205 and he can still get knocked out there. He's still a little chinny, even at light heavyweight. But he used to cut all the way down to 170, so that's when he got knocked out by Harris. That's also when he got knocked out with that crazy kick Joaquin Buckley threw. So suffice it to say, Carlston Harris, he's knocked out guys who don't really have chins, but I don't think he has a lot of power. He just kind of paws with his punches. I cannot stand the way he throws his punches. Been knocked out a bajillion times. It's a total of 4 times he's been knocked out. He got knocked out by the ghost of Santiago Ponzinibbio. I always thought this guy had weak durability. I know Shavkat Rakhmonov finishes everybody for the most part, but when you're getting cartoon KO'd, that usually means you don't have a good chin. Nobody with a good chin gets cartoon, flatline KO'd. And then since he got knocked out by Rachmanov, he also got cartoon KO'd by Chaos Williams. He got knocked out by the ghost of Santiago Ponzinibbio. That might have been an early stoppage, but he was clearly getting hurt left and right. And, everybody who breaks this guy down is going to say this. You'll hear it over and over again. The front choke is his main weapon. I don't know, but definitely I think the jiu-jitsu is this guy's bread and butter. If you watch the training he does, he has not been submitted as a professional, and he has quite a few submissions on his record. He got that front choke against Jeremiah Wells, which was a Hail Mary, by the way. Jeremiah Wells was wrestling him into oblivion for the first couple rounds. Harris just found that Hail Mary front choke to end the fight, put Jeremiah Wells out cold. And yeah, I'd say you definitely don't want to get caught in one of these guys' front chokes. Commonly, that's cited as his main strength. But yeah, I don't really know what his strengths are outside of that. On top of having a bad chin, I think he's got bad cardio. His wrestling's not very good. I mean, some of the shots he was taking against Ponzinibbio were atrocious. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised this line is not wider. And it was actually closer in this earlier. Jake Matthews was minus 300 when I first saw the line. Since then, money's come in on him, which makes a little bit of sense. But let's remember, guys, Jake Matthews was a bigger favorite than this against Neil Magny. People really thought he was going to smoke Magny last September. And yeah, he was smoking him at first. And in fact, the ref actually stopped the fight at the end of round 1 because Matthews had a guillotine choke. They ended up letting the fight go on, which is good because I don't know why the ref stopped the fight. Magny was not out. But yeah, Matthews was dominating for the first couple rounds. I don't even want to know what the live line must have been going into the third round. But then Neil Magny does what Neil Magny does. He somehow pulled a win out of his butt, just like he did against Mike Mallet. And is that a poor reflection of Matthews? Sure. He didn't show a ton of heart in that last round. He probably didn't show the best fight IQ either. But we've seen Neil Magny do that. Mike Malott has not lost a fight in the UFC other than to Neil Magny. So I don't think you can bash Jake Matthews that hard for the loss. You can bash him a little bit, but not enough to make him less of a favorite against Harris than against Magny. That makes no sense because Harris is not a good fighter. Somehow he's put together a 4-3 record in the UFC, but I mean, look at those 4 wins. 3 of those guys are no longer in the UFC. And then the other win is just that Hail Mary against Jeremiah Wells where he was getting killed for the first couple rounds. So Jake Matthews, I think, should be able to win however he wants. If he fires in with a combination, he could easily clip Harris on the chin. Harris isn't the best defensively. Harris often drops his hands as he's entering, so Matthews could also catch him with a counter. I think even if Matthews somehow isn't hurting Harris, he's got the better cardio down the stretch. He's got a lot less ring rust. He's a lot younger. And then I think Matthews is also the better wrestler, so he probably won't want to attempt takedowns here because he could get front choked by Harris, but who knows? I mean, Wells was able to wrestle him for like 2 straight rounds. Didn't have to worry about anything for the early portions of the fight. I think if Harris goes for a bad takedown, he could end up getting front choked by Matthews because Matthews, he can submit his opponents. I think the main path to victory for Harris is hoping Matthews is really dumb and like catching him in some sort of submission. Most likely that front choke that people always talk about. But other than that, I don't really see how he's going to have success down the stretch. He's got a little bit more reach. So maybe in theory he could jab up Matthews from distance, but I just don't think he's good enough defensively. Yeah, I'm really confident in Matthews here. I already put a bet on him at minus 300. I think this line should be closer to minus 450 to be honest. I think Matthews can get it done however he wants, but I'm going to lean with KO as the most likely outcome just because Carlson Harris is really easy to knock out. It's going to be Matthews by round 1 KO. Bantamweight's next. We got Kai Asakura taking on Cameron Smotherman. Neither of these guys having too much success in the UFC so far. Kai Asakura, he came to us from Risen. He's an elite athlete. He's super quick. He's got really good movement, explosive kicks. He can work to the body really well. He's got fast combinations, got a fast jab. He can be hit at times, but I think he's going to have a big speed advantage here because he's coming up from flyweight and moving up to bantamweight, finally. And like I said, he's pretty good with the movement, light on his feet. He's got good dynamic striking. He's going to throw some crazy stuff like knees, spinning back kicks, things of that nature. The issue for Asakura has been the grappling. I mean, this guy has no idea what he's doing on the ground. Going into the fight against Alessandro Pantoja when he got his title match for his debut in the UFC, I was thinking, man, I don't know if this guy can really grapple too well. You don't see a ton of grappling on his pre-UFC tape, but it kind of looked suspect, and sure enough, Pantoja took his back and submitted him. But then I was not expecting Tim Elliott to submit him in his most recent fight. And Kai Asakura got guillotined by Tim Elliott and tapped pretty easily. So yeah, this guy's submission defense not very good. Grappling not very good. But he's going up against Cameron Smotherman here. And somehow, he might have worse grappling than Kai Asakura. It's some of the worst I've ever seen. This guy has no physicality in grappling exchanges. That's the main issue with him. It just seems like even if you know nothing about grappling, you just get a hold of this guy, he's done. So hilariously, I think Kai Asakura might want to wrestle here. Like, I don't know if that's good for him since he's 0-2. And you don't want to have, like, boring fights if you're already struggling. But in terms of just doing what he needs to do to win the fight, I think wrestling could be really effective for him. Cameron Smotherman, aside from having poor grappling, he's a pressure boxer. That's mainly his cup of tea. That's what he's going to do. And he doesn't really do anything else. He just comes forward, tries to pressure with the high guard, waits for his opponents to throw, and then throws past their strikes. He does pretty well with that, although sometimes I think he can lack a little bit of urgency. Definitely one-dimensional, and I think if you're a pressure boxer, lacking urgency is not okay. You have to really be opening up, finding as many opportunities as you can to hurt your opponent. And Cameron Smotherman doesn't have the best record, 12-6, and that's not even fighting like crazy good competition. Yeah, he did lose to Ricky Simone, who's a UFC vet, but Series City, I don't think that guy's that good. So losing to him is not a great look. And then getting knocked out by Charalampos Grigoriou, that's a terrible look. He got smoked by that guy in round 1 on the Contender Series. So ultimately, money's been coming in on Smotherman so far, and I kind of see why people want to fade Kai Asakura. They're putting him as a big favorite, for the second time in a row, and he just hasn't demonstrated that he could win at the UFC level yet. But clearly, he's a good striker. I think, given that he's coming up from flyweight, he's going to have a speed advantage over Smotherman. Because Smotherman keeps his guard so high, I think Asakura can work to the body. I think Asakura is going to have a bit of a range advantage because he has more kicks. And Smotherman, he could crack him now and again because Asakura does have some gaps defensively. He's more of an offensive-minded fighter. So I think Smotherman definitely could get some licks in here or there, but I think Asakura's got more explosivity, more power. Like I said, he's going to be able to work to the body, and Asakura probably has a better chin because, again, getting smoked by Charalampos Grigoriou, even though that guy's got a lot of knockouts, he's just not a good fighter, so I think Kai Asakura has advantages on the feet. And like I said, if anybody wrestles here, it should be Asakura in my opinion, because Cameron Smotherman has some of the worst physicality and grappling exchanges I've ever seen. Gonna say Kai Asakura gets this one done by first round knockout. It could be a decision, but I'm gonna go knockout because we've seen Smotherman can be chinned. And if this line drops like minus 200, minus 210, I think we can take a shot at Asakura. Let's give me Asakura by round 1 knockout. Heavyweights, we got Sergey Pavlovich versus Taliesin Teixeira. Pavlovich, believe it or not, biggest favorite on the card. So Sergey Pavlovich, he had that huge KO run a while ago where he was just knocking people out left and right. Everybody was horrified of this guy until Tom Aspinall finally took away his steam by knocking him out. And we haven't seen Pavlovich get a KO since, but he's usually getting on the pressure. And yeah, needless to say, he hits very, very hard. Even his jab seems to be able to wobble people. And he's got some decent boxing. I like the way he throws combinations in close. He's not throwing one at a time usually. He does have a stiff jab and with an 84-inch reach, which is pretty much the longest in the UFC. John Jones is the only person I've seen in the organization who has a longer reach than Pavlovich. He can get good length with that jab. And even against Waldo Cortez Acosta, we saw he was opening up, doing things he doesn't normally do. Like in round 3, he's even having success with kicks against Acosta. We don't usually see Pavlovich kick. I think when he was on that KO streak, he just got in his head, I can just knock out anyone, so he's just coming forward with reckless abandon, throwing big haymakers, but I think he's showing that he's pretty skilled. The problem is I don't like his footwork. So against Alexander Volkov, he didn't really have a lot of effective ways to close the distance. He's kind of a plotter, just flat-footed, not really moving too much. Yes, at times there are things I don't like from Pavlovich in the striking. I think, he's got a lot of tricks in his bag. I think he's got a lot of skills that he hasn't necessarily even shown to us so far. But just some problems I see with him. Sometimes he's kind of low volume, and I don't really think his footwork is that good. And then a big issue for this fight, the grappling is kind of an unknown. So look at his grappling statistics. He's only seen like 4 takedowns in the UFC. Now, he stuffed 75% of them, But again, that's not really a big sample size of takedowns. And when we have seen him on the ground, like against Alistair Overeem, it was not a good look. So I'm going to guess, as probably a lot of people are, that Pavlovich has improved his grappling since then, but we just don't have any evidence. And we've seen time and time again so many fighters just unable to improve certain aspects of their games. It's really bizarre. So I don't know about Pavlovich's grappling, but holy smokes, Taliesin Teixeira, when I first saw this guy in his pre-UFC tape, I was not too impressed. So you see he's big, he's 6'7", he came into the UFC with a 100% finish rate, but his coordination's terrible. It's like he's a 6'7" guy, but I'm not sure if he's the best athlete. It's like nothing he throws is that connected. It's like really loosey-goosey, herky-jerky. He's kind of leaving his chin up, not really maintaining his defense while he's striking. I just don't like the looks of this guy moving around. I think he's very uncoordinated with his striking. I think that puts him off balance and it leaves him vulnerable to getting whacked. And if this fight stays on the feet, anything could happen. It is a heavyweight fight. Both of these guys are huge. I mean, Pavlovich, I think, is going to kill this guy pretty easily if the fight stays on the feet. Just because Pavlovich is way tighter with his boxing. I think he's got a better chin and he's got more power. So Taliesin Teixeira is moving all around with his loosey-goosey nonsense. I think Pavlovich is eventually just going to smoke him. If these guys end up on the pocket, I think it's going to be more likely Teixeira's got his chin up and he's going to get whacked on the chin and knocked out. I think, even with a jab, Pavlovich could hurt Teixeira. And it just does not seem like Taliesin Teixeira is going to be able to survive long on the feet, especially since he's very aggressive with his own striking style. But we did see for the first time Teixeira using some wrestling. So supposedly this guy's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And yeah, we saw a little bit of that in his last fight against Tai Tuivasa. Nothing in the grappling that'll really knock your socks off. He's not like Jailton Almeida. But he did use a single leg takedown pretty effectively early in that fight. And yeah, that's a problem here. I have a problem with making Pavlovich this big of a favorite. So when I first broke down this fight, I'm like, yeah, Pavlovich should win. Maybe Teixeira can take him down and maybe cause issues. But if I had to guess, I'm going to say Pavlovich is going to be able to stuff those. And if he does, it's just way more probable that Pavlovich gets a knockout than vice versa. But then I saw the line. It's like minus 600. Are you serious? No, we can't make a line this wide. If anything, you've got to bet Teixeira at this point, because even though Pavlovich knocks him out at a high rate, like I say, heavyweight fights are volatile. If either of these guys clip you, you're going to be in trouble. Teixeira, at the end of the day, is still a 6'7" guy. You got some, height to get through, and either of these guys could get clipped. Again, way more likely Pavlovich clips Teixeira, but additionally, we also have potential grappling upside for Teixeira here. I mean, we don't know how Pavlovich is going to look from his back. So I think if you're looking for a bet, you got to take a small stab at Teixeira. That's not for the faint of heart because, yeah, it's going to look really bad most likely. I do think Pavlovich gets a first round KO. I think the under 1.5 probably hits here, but they're kind of onto it, kind of juiced. Maybe Teixeira by sub is a crazy prop you could look at. But I think Pavlovich is getting this one done and getting it done early. Give me Pavlovich round 1 KO. For the co-main event, we got light heavyweights, the return of Mingyang Zhang. He's going up against Alonzo Menifield. So Mingyang Zhang, this guy was really, really interesting when he first came to the UFC because he was just on a crazy round 1 knockout streak. Wasn't really getting extended in his fights. And he definitely has a good chin. You see he's got that blockhead, hard jawline. I'm not seeing this guy get rocked by punches too much. Early in his career, when he was extremely young, he did get knocked out, but recently, not really seeing him get hurt by punches. And he has heavy power when he sits down on his punches. He likes to sit down on a heavy 1, 2, 3. A lot of these Chinese guys throw lead kicks. We keep talking about that a lot. We had some other Chinese guys on the card, and they kind of have similar striking styles. They throw a lot of lead kicks, and they sit down on heavy combinations. Not really your typical styles of striking, but for Zhang it's worked because he's got good durability, and when he hits you, there are usually consequences. Now Zhang, he likes the pressure, which is good. You like to see a guy with lots of power and good durability pressuring forward, taking away space, trying to land those big punches, and yeah, as a result of that, it's not surprising that he's ending his fights quickly. Now stamina, somewhat unknown because, like I say, it's kind of that weird situation. You're seeing this guy get finishes early. You don't know if they have bad stamina, if they're a gasser, but they might be a gasser. You just don't know. And for the first time, we saw Zhang have a UFC fight that goes into the second round against Johnny Walker. His last time out, he finally went into round 2. And yeah, to me, it did look like he was slowing down a bit. Walker ultimately beat him just by throwing calf kicks. You don't see too many, knockouts follow from calf kicks. So to me, that's kind of a red flag for Zhang. I think you're probably kind of low level if you're getting finished by calf kicks. And yeah, I think he did slow down a bit. But the problem is he's going up against Alonzo Menifield here. And his style, I think you could summarize as takes one to give one. He just has that really high guard. He doesn't have a great strike differential. He's usually willing to, get hit to set up his own strikes because he's not super tall for a light heavyweight. Not super good at being able to fight from range. So he kind of has to get in close. And that requires him to get hit. And he gets hit a lot. He's been knocked out quite a few times as well. So that's kind of a concern I have for him. He's getting up there in age. And like I said, been getting knocked out a lot. So the chin is fading. But kind of like we talked about with Jose Henrique, he's going to just zombie through damage. Like, he's not going to quit. You can take him out against his will. You got to just put him out cold. But if you don't do that and you just hurt him a little bit, he's going to keep moving forward. He's going to keep fighting. So if Zhang is not able to completely put him out, he's not going to get rid of Menifield, I don't think. And Menifield might do well. I was noticing this. If he can extend the fight, maybe jab and pull. Now, I know he doesn't have a lot of range. As I mentioned, he's not very tall, but, Zhang Mingyang, not the best striker from a technical perspective. I do think if Menifield can, work his jab and, stay out of range, come in with a good game plan and hopefully not get cracked early, he can win this fight. But ultimately, in terms of a prediction, I got to lean more towards Zhang just because he's so much younger. He's going to be the hometown guy in China, and Menifield's durability seems to be fading. So I just don't quite trust Menifield to be able to survive the early goings in terms of a prediction. But again, we look at the line. Menifield's up to plus 235. And if that line goes to plus 245, I have in my notes, that's where I would bet Menifield. If he goes up to plus 245, I think you're definitely getting value on him at that point because, yeah, I think if he uses a good game plan where he can kind of, jab, move, use his footwork a little bit, extend Zhang, he can beat him. And obviously, we saw that if you use calf kicks, he's vulnerable to those. So Menifield could be a live dog here, but I do think Zhang's going to win by first round knockout, most likely. Finally, our main event, we got Song Yadong taking on Deiveson Figueiredo in a bantamweight bout. Song Yadong, he's just an absolute powerhouse. This guy wants to take your head off. He's not like a super finesse striker. He's not a guy who's going to really take advantage of his skills, although he will do that in some of his fights. For the most part, I think he just wants to take your head off, throwing big combinations, extending combinations, and then he's got heavy calf kicks on top of those. Now, as I alluded to a little bit, we do see him maybe use some finesse. He seems to change his approaches in his fights. In the past, you see him just stalking people, trying to take their heads off, sprawl and brawl type stuff, but more recently, we've seen him, engage wrestling a lot more. Like he did a lot of wrestling against Chris Gutierrez, a lot of wrestling against Sean O'Malley. If he thinks you can be taken down, he's definitely going to go to the wrestling. He's got a nice single leg, and he's got good jiu-jitsu overall. He's got okay ground and pound. On top of that, he'll work a lot of punches to the body from top position. Didn't get a ton of ground and pound off against Sean O'Malley his last time out. But needless to say, Song Yadong, he will switch up his approaches and fight. Sometimes be a little bit more jab heavy. Sometimes he'll manage distance a little bit more instead of trying to take your head off. And he is a great grappler, but we have seen him get controlled a bit. He got controlled against Piotr Yan, lost the last 2 rounds of that fight because he was getting controlled toward the end. Also losing on the feet a little bit to Yan, but, we have seen Song Yadong give up control. He's generally pretty hard to take down. He's got a great sprawl. He's got really good strength and takedown defense. But if you do get him down, you can control him a bit. And that might be a path for Figgy here. Problem with Figgy, he just can't have much left in the tank. He's been in wars. He had a huge war with Piotr Yan, went 5 rounds, took a lot of big shots in that fight. So far, Figgy still looks like, he's got some left in the tank, got some power, definitely does well in the grappling exchanges, but it's just at some point you got to think it's going to give out. And once again, he's in a 5-round fight, this time against the young, powerful Song Yadong. I just don't know if we can expect him to hold up here, but holy cow, he keeps proving his grappling is phenomenal. He was a massive underdog against Umar Nurmagomedov at the beginning of 2026. He was winning some grappling exchanges against Nurmagomedov. This guy is extremely strong. He's very powerful from the body lock, from his upper body. And if he gets you to the ground, he can take your back. He's got excellent jiu-jitsu. His problem is sometimes he can play around with the leg locks too much, play around with being on his back, and then he can concede control time like that. And yeah, he's no slouch on the feet either. Sometimes he can be low volume, but he's got really good timing. He can attack on angles. He's got really powerful hooks, and he'll work to the body as well. I also like the kicks. Has some great body kicks in his repertoire. From a technical perspective, I don't have any problems with Figueiredo, but to me, this just comes down to, the age difference. And Figueiredo, he's not really a guy who, can afford to be losing his durability. He likes to come forward on the feet, tries to be aggressive. Sometimes he doesn't throw a lot of volume, but when he is, he's kind of being aggressive, working heavy strikes. And yeah, if he does that with Song Yadong, he's going to be eating big shots. And at some point, I think the chin's got to go. We haven't seen him get chinned yet, but probably going to happen pretty soon. And, either of these guys I think could concede control time. I think Figueiredo could get takedowns, but Song Yadong usually he can get back up. But yeah, I think Song Yadong's winning the fight. But again, I'm not laying minus 550 on him. No chance. I don't think he wins like 90% of the time. Like, I don't know how much more above 80% of the time he wins because, like I said, I think if the fight gets extended and these guys are on the feet for a long time, I got to imagine Song Yadong landing big shots, having the bigger optics, has more finishing upside, and possibly he even ends up on top of Figueiredo because, like I said, Figueiredo can play around with jiu-jitsu, but I actually think Figueiredo is quite a bit stronger in the grappling realm. I think he could take down Song Yadong, control him for a little bit, so that's why I'm hesitant to lay minus 550, but yeah, I'm not betting on Figueiredo either at this price. I think Song Yadong wins. So give me Song Yadong by decision here. And there you have it. We just got through the whole card. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. You can leave a nice comment, leave a mean comment, leave a comment about cake, because we all love cake. And we're going to have more UFC action in the coming weeks. We got events all throughout June, including UFC Freedom 250. You're not going to want to miss the breakdown for that. See you guys soon. Peace.